So now we have the game that restarts when we hit an object or we press R. We have it respawn right in the middle in the same position that it started. So we're going to add in our die animation. And in order to do that, you have to go back to your sprite sheet. So I am going to go back. So coming into this game, I'm going to go to my player sprites, and I added in this player hurt sprite sheet that I found in the folder. So all I need to do with this player hurt sprite sheet is create a texture atlas first. Once I do that, double click it to open up in the sprite editor, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab that first one, trim, new sprite, and just continue like we've done before to create this animation. And so now I have my player hurt right here. I'm going to click on that one, add frames to sprite sheet, click 2 through 5, and you see my player has his spin there. I'm going to add those selected frames, and I am all set. Well, one thing before that, let's call this die. And so there we are. So we now have that animation, but we need to add in some information about how to go ahead and call that. So going into our scripts and on the player controller, I'm going to start doing some things here and making some changes to this so that we can go ahead and get this to work. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this initialize, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in this dot state equals, and I'm going to type in moving. Coming outside of that, oops, we don't need a 0, come to the outside and add a semicolon. And now we're going to go set up what moving means. And I'm going to come up underneath my move function, and I'm going to hit enter. And basically the best idea is I like to copy and paste these so I have all the brackets. And I'm going to paste that in. So player, controller, prototype, and we're just going to change this to moving. And equals function, and we're going to take out the delta time. And in starting with this, we have an if statement. So this, and I'm going to get rid of the rest of this and just leave the last parenthesis. So this dot state, and we're going to do an exclamation point equals and space and single quotes moving. Coming to the outside of that, now we have this bracket. So this is where I'm going to add in my next line of code. So the next thing I wanted to say is this dot entity dot sprite dot play parentheses single quotes moving. Coming out to the end of that, I'm going to put a semicolon on that, and one more time, this dot state equals single quotes moving. Come to the end of that, semicolon. So now that we have that, we are going to add in a few more things. Well, first let's define what our die is. And underneath this one, we're going to do the prototype for die. So I'm going to copy this, hit return, and this one is going to be called die. Equals function. We don't need a DT, and I'm going to get rid of this if this. Actually, there we go, and get rid of all of it. So I'm going to go ahead and type in here. Let's copy this and put it right up here, and we're going to say die. So if, or this state equals die, and then this entity dot sprite dot play, and change this to die. And then we're going to say get rid of this, and we're going to do this dot entity dot rigid on. I think I'm just going to go copy this because I believe that's the code that I'm going to use. So we'll copy this, come in here and hit paste, and we have one too many brackets, so I'm just going to get rid of that one, and we are okay with that. So now that we have this code in, we can reference our die, and we can come up to this update. And in this update, we are going to write if parentheses, exclamation point, sorry, not yet, if this dot entity dot sprite dot underline lowercase c current uppercase clip dot name equals space single quotes die. Then we want to come to the outside of that, do a curly bracket and hit return. If parentheses, and here's our exclamation point, this dot entity dot sprite dot underscore current clip dot is plain, and we should have a parentheses there, come out to the outside of that, add another bracket, hit return. Then we want to say this dot moving, so, parentheses, and then the outside of that to semicolon. And then underneath this parenthesis, we go 1, 2, and come into here, and we're going to add an else if statement, else if parentheses, exclamation point, this dot falling, and twice, this dot state, exclamation point equals, and these are going to be quotations die. Come to the outside of that, add in curly brackets, hit return, and say this dot moving. Oh, we need the parentheses after that. There we go. So that gets rid of those errors. So if I just check my code here, we have this dot state moving, and then we go to the app keyboard to come into our update where we talk about move and reset, and then the two entities for the die. We come into our prototype of move so we can have our movement, and then we talk about our animation for moving, and then we come down to our animation for die, and then we come down to our on collision start, and this is where when we have that collision we need to talk about what we want to do. So we want to tell it to use that die state. So we're going to hit enter after that last semicolon and type in this dot state equals single quotes die, go the outside of that semicolon, and one more, this dot entity dot sprite dot play parentheses quotation die, come to the outside of that semicolon, and we should be ready to go. So I'm going to save this script, and I'm going to come back into my 2D scroller, and on my player, I'm going to open this up and click on my player. We're going to scroll down until we see our swimming animation, and we need to change this to moving because that is the name that we used in our game. Notice that loop is checked, and I have reduced the frames per second to 10. I need to add another clip, and to do this, I'm going to go to my player sprite folder where I have everything saved. Here's that die animation that I made. Coming back to my player, I am going to scroll back down, add a clip, and this clip is going to be titled as die. And then I'm going to click on this pencil for the empty, and I'm going to select the die, and then I'm going to uncheck the loop, and I'm going to change the frames per second to 10. And once I have done that, if I come up and click play and launch this game, you can see my character swimming. If I hit something, I die. Or I hit a couple of things. If I get pushed back, I can always set the R for reset also. So I'm kind of getting out of my game here. So reset right in the middle. Oh, there we go. And this is what we have for our game at this time. So now you will work on your screen recording and publishing.